burst into flames, Krishna and Balaram jumped off the peak. After reaching the ground unseen by Jarasandha and his followers, they returned to the Dwarka fort, which floated within the sea. Jarasandha decided that Ram and Krishna had been burned to death in the fire, and he took his army back to his kingdom. At this point, Maharaj Parikshit asked a question, and Sri Sukadeva Goswami responded to it by beginning to narrate the history of the marriage of Lord Sri Krishna and Rukmini. Rukmini, the young daughter of Bhishmaka, king of Vidarbha, had heard of Sri Krishna's beauty, strength, and other fine qualities, and she therefore made up her mind that he would be the best husband for her. Lord Krishna also wanted to marry her. But although Rukmini's other relatives approved of her marriage to Krishna, her brother Rukmini was envious of the Lord.
टाइम चालू हो गया
Everyone?
32 से था 10 बजे 10:30 बजे
But although Rukmini's other relatives approved of her marriage to Krishna, her brother Rukmini was envious of the Lord, thus forbade her to marry him. Rukmini wanted her to marry Shishupal instead. Rukmini unhappily took up her duties in preparation for the marriage, but she also sent a trustworthy Brahman to Krishna with a letter. When the Brahman arrived in Dwarka, Shri Krishna properly honored him with ritual worship and other tokens of reverence. The Lord then asked the Brahmana why he had come. The Brahmana opened Rukmini's letter and showed it to Lord Krishna, who had the messenger read it out to him. Rukmini Devi wrote, "Ever since I have heard about you, my Lord, I have become completely attracted to you. Without fail, please come before my marriage to Shishupal and take me away. In accordance with family custom, on the day before my marriage, I will visit the temple of goddess Ambika. That would be the best opportunity for you to appear and easily kidnap me. If you do not show me this favor, I will give up my life by fasting and observing severe vows. Then perhaps in my next life, I will be able to obtain you." After reading Rukmini's letter to Lord Krishna, the Brahmana took his leave so he might carry out his daily religious duties. Text 1. Translation. Sukadeva Goswami said, "My dear king, thus graced by Lord Krishna, Muchukunda circumambulated him and bowed down to him. Then Muchukunda, the beloved descendant of Ikshvaku, exited through the mouth of the cave." Text 2. Translation. Seeing that the size of all human beings, animals, trees, and plants was severely reduced, and thus realizing that the age of Kali was at hand, Muchukunda left for the north. Purport. There are several significant words in this verse. A standard Sanskrit dictionary gives the following English meanings for the word Shullaka, which means little, small, low, vile, poor, indigent, wicked, malicious, abandoned, hard, pained, distressed. These are the symptoms of the age of Kali, and all these qualities are said here to apply to men, animals, plants, and trees in this age. We who are enamored of ourselves and our environment can perhaps imagine the superior beauty and living conditions available to people in former ages. The last line of this text, Jagama Disham Uttaram, means, quote, "He went towards the north," can be understood as follows. By traveling north in India, one comes to the world's highest mountains, the Himalayan range. There, one can still find many beautiful peaks and valleys, where there are quiet hermitages suitable for austerity and meditation. Thus, in Vedic culture, going to the north indicates renouncing the comforts of the ordinary society and going to the Himalayan mountains to practice serious austerities for spiritual advancement. Text 3. Translation. The sober king, beyond material association and free of doubt, was convinced of the value of austerity. Absorbing his mind in Lord Krishna, he came to the Gandhamadana mountain. Purport. The name Gandhamadana indicates a place of delightful fragrances. Undoubtedly, Gandhamadana was filled with the aroma of wild flowers and forest honey and with other natural scents. Text 4. Translation. There he arrived at Badrikashram, the abode of Lord Naranarayan, where remaining tolerant to all dualities, he peacefully worshipped the Supreme Lord Hari by performing severe austerities. Text 5. Translation. The Lord returned to Mathura, which was still surrounded by the Yavanas. Then he destroyed the army of barbarians and began taking their valuables to Dwarka. Purport. It is clear from this verse that Kalyavana alone pursued Lord Krishna into the mountain cave. When Krishna returned to the besieged city of Mathura, he eliminated the vast barbarian army. Text 6. As the wealth was being carried by oxen and men under Lord Krishna's direction, Jarasandha appeared at the head of 23 armies. Text 7. O king, seeing the fierce waves of enemy's army, the two Madhavas, imitating human behavior, ran swiftly away. Text 8. Translation. Abandoning the abundant riches, fearless but feeling fear, they went many yojanas to their lotus-like feet, on their lotus-like feet. Text 9. Translation. When he saw them fleeing, powerful Jarasandha laughed loudly and then pursued them with chariots and foot soldiers. He could not understand the exalted position of the two lords. Text 10. Translation. Apparently exhausted after fleeing a long distance, the two lords climbed a high mountain named Pravarshana, upon which Lord Indra showered incessant rain. Text 11. Although he knew they were highly on the mountain, Jarasandha could not find any trace of them. Therefore, O king, he placed firewood on all sides and set the mountain ablaze. Purport. Clearly we are observing one of the Supreme Lord's transcendental pastimes. Although the Bhagavatam states that the two lords, Krishna and Balaram, were exhausted, even in their so-called exhausted state, they were able to quickly climb a high mountain and shortly thereafter jump off it to the ground. It would be unwise and illogical to ignore the whole picture the sages are giving us here and instead try to pick apart isolated descriptions. Clearly we are watching the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the midst of his spiritual pastimes. We are not observing an ordinary human being. Lord Krishna and Balaram were still quite young men, and when this pastime took place, one can easily see in these descriptions how they must have been enjoying themselves, eagerly fleeing from somewhat ridiculous King Jarasandha, racing up a mountain, jumping off, and totally befuddling the constantly failing demon, who somehow or the other never lost confidence in himself. Seen without envy or quarrelsomeness, the Lord's pastimes are immensely entertaining. Text 12. The two of them then suddenly jumped off from the burning mountain, which was 11 yojanas high, and fell to the ground. Purport. 11 yojanas is approximately 90 miles. Text 13. Translation. Unseen by their opponent or his followers, O king, those two most exalted Yadus returned to their city of Dwarka, which had the ocean as the protective moat. Text 14. Translation. Jarasandha, moreover, mistakenly thought that Balaram and Keshava had burned to death in the fire. Thus he withdrew his vast military force and returned to the Magadha kingdom. Text 15. Translation. As ordered by Lord Brahma, Raivata, the opulent ruler of Anartha, gave Lord Balaram his daughter, Raivati, in marriage. This has already been discussed. Purport. The topic of Lord Krishna's marriage to Rukmini will now be discussed. By way of introduction, a brief mention is made of his brother Baladev's marriage. The marriage was alluded in the 9th canto of Bhagavatam, 3rd chapter, text 33 to 36. Text 16 and 17. Translation. O hero among the Kurus, the Supreme Lord himself, Govinda, married Bhishmaka's daughter Vaidarbhi, who was a direct expansion of goddess of fortune. The Lord did this by her desire. And in the process, he beat down Salva and other kings who took Shishupal's side. Indeed, as everyone watched, Shri Krishna took Rukmini, just as Garuda boldly stole nectar from the demigods. But Srila Jiva Goswami gives the following profound comments on these two verses. The words Shriya Matram indicate that beautiful Rukmini is a direct expansion of the eternal goddess of fortune. Therefore, she is worthy to be the bride of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in Brahma Samhita 5.56, Shreya Kantaha Kantaha Parama Purushaha. Quote, in the spiritual world, all the female lovers are goddess of fortune and the male lover is the Supreme Personality. Thus, Srila Jiva Goswami explains, Srimati Rukmini Devi is the plenary portion of Srimati Radharani. The Kartika Mahatmya section of the Padma Purana states, Kaishore Gopakanyas Tayovane Rajakanyakaha. Quote, in childhood, Shri Krishna enjoyed with the daughters of cowherd men. And in his adolescence, he enjoyed with the daughters of the kings. Similarly, in the Skanda Purana, we find the statement, Rukmini Dwaravatyam tu Radha Vrindavane Vane. Quote, Rukmini is in Dwarka, but Radha in the forest of Vrindavani. The term Swayamvare here means that by one's own choice. Although the word often refers to a formal Vedic ceremony in which an aristocratic girl may select her own husband. But here it indicates the informal and indeed unprecedented events surrounding Krishna's marriage to Rukmini. In fact, Sri Krishna and Rukmini chose each other because of their eternal transcendental love. Text 18. Translation. King Parikshit said, the Supreme Lord married Rukmini, the beautiful-faced daughter of Bhishma, in the Rakshasa style, or so I have heard. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami quotes the following Smriti statement. Rakshasho Yuddha Haranat. Quote, a Rakshasa marriage takes place when the bride is stolen from one's rival suitor by force. Similarly, Shukadev Goswami himself has already said, Ragya Brahmathya. Krishna had to beat down opposing kings to take Rukmini. Text 19. Translation. My Lord, I wish to hear how the immeasurably powerful Lord Krishna took away his bride while defeating such kings as Magadha and Shalva. Purport. We should not think that Shri Krishna was actually afraid of Jarasandha. In the very next chapter, we will find that Shri Krishna easily defeats Jarasandha and his soldiers. Thus, we should never doubt the supreme prowess of Lord Sri Krishna. Text 20. Translation. What experienced listener or Brahman could ever grow satiated while listening to the pious, charming, and ever fresh topics of Lord Krishna, which cleanse away the world's contamination? Text 21. Translation. Sri Badarayani said, there was a king named Bhishma, the powerful ruler of Vidarbha. He had 5 sons and 1 daughter of lovely countenance. Text 22. Translation. Rukmi was the firstborn son, followed by Rukmartha, Rukmabahu, Rukmakesha, and Rukmamali, and his sister was the exalted Rukmini. Text 23. Hearing the beauty, prowess, and transcendental character and opulence of Mukunda from the visitors to the palace who sang his praises, Rukmini decided that he would be the perfect husband for her. Purport. The verse Sadasham indicates that Rukmini and Sri Krishna had similar qualities, and thus they were naturally attracted to each other. King Bhishma was a pious man, and therefore many spiritually advanced persons must have visited his palace. These saintly persons undoubtedly preached openly about the glories of Sri Krishna. Text 24. Translation. Lord Krishna knew that Rukmini possessed intelligence, auspicious bodily markings, beauty, proper behavior, and all other good qualities. Concluding that she would be an ideal wife for him, he made up his mind to marry her. Purport. Just as Lord Krishna was described as Sadhusham Patini, an ideal husband for Rukmini, being just like her, Rukmini is described as Sadhusham Bharyam, an ideal wife for Shri Krishna, being just like him. That is natural, since Srimati Rukmini is Lord Krishna's internal potency. Text 25. Translation. O king, because Rukmini envied the Lord, he forbade his family members to give his sister to Krishna, although they wanted to. Instead, Rukmini decided to give Rukmini to Shishupal. Purport. Rukmini abused his position as elder brother and acted with impure motives. He would only suffer for his decision. Text 26. Translation. Dark-eyed Vaidarbhi was aware of this plan, and it deeply upset her. Analyzing the situation, she quickly sent a trustworthy Brahmin to Krishna. Text 27. Upon reaching Dwarka, the Brahmin was brought inside by the gatekeepers and saw the primeval personality of God sitting on a golden throne. Text 28. Translation. Seeing the Brahman, Shri Krishna, the Lord of the Brahmanas, came down from his throne and seated him. Then the Lord worshipped him, just as he himself is worshipped by the demigods. Text 29. After the Brahmana had eaten and rested, Shri Krishna, the goal of saintly devotees, came forward, and while massaging the Brahmana's feet with his own hands, he patiently questioned him as follows. Text 30. The Supreme Lord said, O best of the exalted Brahmanas, are your religious practices sanctioned by the senior authorities proceeding without great difficulty? Is your mind always fully satisfied? Purport. Here we have translated the word dharma as religious practice. Although this does not fully convey the Sanskrit sense of the word, Krishna did not appear within a secular society. The people in Vedic times could hardly imagine a society that did not understand the need to obey God's law. Thus, to To them, the word dharma conveyed a sense of duty in general. Higher principles prescribed duty, and so on. It was automatically understood that such duty were within a religious context. But religion in those days was not a specific aspect or department of life, but rather a guiding light for all activities. Irreligious life was considered demoniac, and God's hand was seen in everything. Text 31. Translation. When a Brahmin is satisfied with whatever comes his way and does not fall away from his religious duties, those very religious principles become his desired cow, fulfilling all his wishes. Text 32. An unsatisfied Brahmin wanders restlessly from one planet to another, even if he becomes king of heaven. But a satisfied Brahmin, though he may possess nothing, rests peacefully, all his limbs free of distress. Purport. Those who are unsatisfied feel distress throughout their body, becoming subject to many diseases. A satisfied Brahmin, however, although he may possess nothing, is peaceful and calm, and there is no distress within his body or mind. Text 33. Translation. I repeatedly bow my head in respect to those Brahmins who are satisfied with their lot. Saintly, prideless, and peaceful, they are the best well-wishers of all living beings. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami explains that Swalabha also means achieving one's self, or in other words, self-realization. Thus, an advanced Brahmin is always satisfied with the spiritual understanding, never depending on material formalities or facilities. Text 34. Translation. O Brahman, is your king attending to your welfare? Indeed, that king in whose country the citizens are happy and protected is very dear to me. Text 35. Whence have you come, crossing the impassable sea, and for what purpose? Explain all this to us, if it is not a secret, and tell us what we may do for you. Text 36. Translation. Thus questioned by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who incarnates to perform his pastimes, the Brahman told him everything. Purport. The word grihita may be translated as grasp or caught, and thus exactly in English may also mean to perceive or understand something. Therefore, Lord Krishna's transcendental body is perceived or understood, or in other words, grasped by the devotees when the Lord comes to exhibit his transcendental pastimes. These pastimes are not whimsical, but are a part of a complex program, structured and executed by the Lord himself, for the awakening of the conditioned souls to their natural love and devotion for him and bringing them back to God. Text 37. Shri Rukmani said in her letter as read by the Brahman, O beauty of the worlds, having heard your qualities which enter the ears of those who hear and remove their bodily distress, and having also heard of your beauty which fulfills all the visual desires of those who see, I have fixed my shameless mind upon you, O Krishna. Purport. Rukmini was a king's daughter, courageous and bold, and furthermore she would rather die than lose Krishna. Considering all this, she wrote a frank, explicit letter begging Krishna to come and take her away. Text 38. Translation. O Mukunda, you are equal only to yourself in lineage, character, beauty, knowledge, youthfulness, wealth, and influence. O lion among men, you delight the minds of all mankind. What aristocratic, sober-minded, and marriageable girl of a good family would not choose you as her husband when the proper time has come? Text 39. Translation. Therefore, my dear Lord, I have chosen you as my husband, and I surrender myself to you. Please come swiftly, O Almighty One, and make me your wife. My dear lotus-eyed Lord, let Shishupal never touch the hero's portion like a jackal stealing the property of a lion. Text 40. If I have sufficiently worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead by pious works, sacrifices, charity, rituals, and vows, and also by worshipping the demigods, brahmanas, and gurus, then may the Gadagraja come and take my hand, and not Dhammaghosha's son or anyone else. Purport. The Acharya's comment as follows on this verse. Rukmini felt.
You need that bit light in the back.
Is it not?
If you don't need somebody like this, you can't kind of.
Yes, Guru. Sure, I should turn off the lights?
If you don't need it.
Yes, Guru. Yes.
Okay. Read fast.
Yes, Guru.
You read fast.
Should I slow down?
Real fast.
Oh, much faster? Faster than?
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Get it right speed. Get it right speed.
Sure. I'm sorry.
You're going at the right speed.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Therefore, my dear Lord, I have chosen you as my husband, and I surrender myself to you. Please come swiftly, O Almighty One, and make me your wife. My dear lotus-eyed Lord, let Shishupal never touch the hero's portion like a jackal stealing the property of a lion. Text 40. Translation. If I have sufficiently worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead by pious works, sacrifices, charity, rituals, and vows, and also by worshipping the demigods, brahmanas, and gurus, then may Gadagraja come and take my hand, and not Dhammaghosha's son or anyone else. Purport. The Acharya's comment as follows on this verse. Rukmini felt that no one could obtain Lord Krishna by the efforts of a single lifetime. Therefore, she earnestly pointed out the pious activities she had performed in that life and previous lives, hoping to convince Sri Krishna to come. Text 41. Translation. O unconquerable one, tomorrow when my marriage ceremony is about to begin, you should arrive unseen in Vidarbha and surround yourself with the leaders of your army. Then crush the forces of Chaitya and Magadendra and marry me in the Rakshasa style, winning me with your valor. Purport. As Srila Prabhupada points out in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead book, Rukmini, being born of a royal blood, certainly had brilliant grasp of political affairs. She advised Sri Krishna to enter the city alone and unnoticed, and then surround himself with his military commanders, so he could do what was needed. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti compares the coming fight to the Lord's churning of the ocean to extract the goddess Lakshmi. Gorgeous Rukmini, the goddess of fortune, could be gained in the coming turbulence. Text 42. Translation. Since I will be staying within the inner chambers of the palace, you may wonder, how can I carry you away without killing some of your relatives? But I shall tell you a way. On the day before the marriage, there is a grand procession to honor the royal family's deity. And in this procession, the new bride goes outside the city to visit the goddess Girija. Purport. Clever Rukmini anticipated a possible objection on the part of Sri Krishna. He certainly would not object to subduing rascals like Shishupal and Jarasandha. But he might be reluctant to injure or kill Rukmini's relatives, some of whom might block his way to the palace inner sanctum, where the women were protected. The procession to or from the temple of Girija would provide a perfect opportunity for Krishna to kidnap Rukmini without harming her relatives. Text 43, translation. O lotus-eyed one, great souls like Lord Shiva hanker to bathe in the dust of your lotus feet and thereby destroy their ignorance. If I cannot obtain your mercy, I shall simply give up my vital force, which will have become weak from the severe penances I will perform, and then, after hundreds of lifetimes of endeavor, I may obtain your mercy. Purport. The divine Rukmini's extraordinary dedication to Lord Shri Krishna is possible only on a spiritual platform, not in the fragile world of mundane affection. Text 44. The Brahmana said, "This is the confidential message I have brought with me, O Lord of the Yadus. Please consider what must be done in these circumstances and do it at once." Purport. When the Brahman arrived, he broke the seal of a confidential letter written in the privacy of Rukmini's quarters and meant only for Lord Krishna. By using the term Guhya Sandesha, the trustworthy Brahman, personally selected by Rukmini, here affirms that he has not violated the confidentiality of this message. Only Lord Krishna has heard it. Since the marriage of Rukmini was fast approaching, Shri Krishna would have to act immediately. The term Yadudeva indicates that Lord Krishna, as a lord of powerful Yadu dynasty, should make his decision and then mobilize his followers if necessary. Chapter 53. Chapter 53. Krishna kidnaps Rukmini. This chapter describes how Lord Shri Krishna arrives in Kundina, the capital of Vidarbha, and kidnaps Rukmini in the presence of powerful enemies. After Lord Krishna had heard the Brahmana messenger recite Rukmini's letter, the Lord said to him, "I am indeed attracted to Rukmini, and I know her brother Rukmini's opposition of me marrying her. Therefore I must kidnap her after crushing all the Loknath kings, just as one might generate fire from wood by friction." Since the solemnizing of the vows between Rukmini and Shishupal was scheduled to occur in only 3 days, Lord Krishna had Daruka ready his chariot at once. Then he immediately set out for Vidarbha, which he reached after one night's travel. King Bhishmaka, trapped by his affection for his son Rukmini, was prepared to give his daughter to Shishupal. Bhishmaka saw to all the necessary preparations. He had the city decorated in various ways and had its main roads and intersections thoroughly cleansed. Damaghosha, the king of Chedi, having also done everything necessary to prepare for his son's marriage, arrived in Vidarbha. King Bhishmaka greeted him properly and gave him a place to stay. Many other kings such as Jarasandha, Salva, and Dantavakra also came to witness the occasion. These enemies of Krishna had conspired to kidnap the bride of Krishna came. They planned to fight him together and thus guarantee Shishupal his bride. Hearing of these plans, Lord Baladev gathered his entire army and quickly went to Kundinapur. On the night before the wedding, Rukmini, about to retire, had still not seen neither the Brahman nor Krishna arrive. In anxiety, she cursed her bad fortune. But just then she felt her left side twitch, which is a good omen. Indeed, the Brahman shortly appeared and related to her what Krishna had said, including his firm promise to kidnap her. When King Bhishmaka heard that Krishna and Balaram had arrived, he went out to greet them to the accompaniment of triumphant music. He worshipped the lords with various gifts and designated residences for them. Thus the king showed due respect to the lords, as he did to each of his numerous royal guests. The people of Vidarbha, seeing Lord Krishna, remarked to one another that he alone would be a suitable husband for Rukmini. They prayed that on the strength of whatever pious credit they had, Krishna might win Rukmini's hand. And when the time came for Srimati Rukmini Devi to visit the temple of Sri Ambika, she proceeded there surrounded by many guards. After bowing down to the deity, Rukmini prayed to be allowed to have Sri Krishna as her husband. Then she took the hand of her girlfriend and left the Ambika temple. Seeing her inexpressible beauty, the great heroes present dropped their weapons and fell to the ground unconscious. Rukmini walked with deliberate steps until she noticed Krishna. Then, as everyone looked on, Shri Krishna took Rukmini onto his chariot like a lion, claiming his rightful share from the band of jackals. He drove back all the opposing kings and slowly made his exit, followed by his associates. Jarasandha and other kings, unable to bear their defeat and dishonor, loudly condemned themselves and declaring that this defamation was like a petty animal stealing away what rightfully belongs to the lion. Text 1. Translation. Sukadev Goswami said, thus hearing the confidential message of Princess Vaidarbhi, Lord Yadunandan took the Brahmana's hand and smiling spoke to him as follows. Text 2. Translation. The Supreme Lord said, just as Rukmini's mind is fixed on me, my mind is fixed on her. I can't even sleep at night. I know that Rukmi, out of envy, has forbidden our marriage. Text 3. Translation. She has dedicated herself exclusively to me, and her beauty is flawless. I will bring her here after thrashing those worthless kings in battle, just as one brings a blazing flame out of firewood. Purport. When latent fire is aroused in wood, the fire bursts forth, consuming the wood in the act of manifestation. Similarly, Lord Krishna boldly predicted that Rukmini would come forth to take his hand, and that in the process the wicked kings would be burnt by the fire of Krishna's determination. Text 4. Translation. Shukadev Goswami said, Lord Madhusudan also understood the exact lunar time for Rukmini's wedding. Thus he told his driver, Daruka, ready my chariot immediately. Text 5. Translation. Daruka brought the Lord's chariot, yoked with the horses named Shaibya, Shugriva, Meghapushpa, and Balahaka. He then stood before the Lord Krishna with joined palms. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes the following text from Padma Puran describing Lord Krishna's chariot horses. Shaibyastu Shukapatrabha Shugrivo Hema Pingala Meghapushpastu Medabha Pandurohi Balahaka. Shaibya was green like a parrot green. Shugriva was yellow gold. Meghapushpa the color of cloud. And Balahaka, which is whitish. Text 6. Arudyash translation. Lord Sauri mounted his chariot and had the Brahmana to do likewise. Then the Lord's swift horses took them from Anarka district to Vaidarbha in a single night. Text 7. Translation. King Bhishmaka, the master of Kundina, having succumbed to the sway of affection for his son, was about to give his daughter to Shishupal. The king saw to all the required preparations. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami points out in this connection that King Bhishmaka had no particular liking for Shishupala, but rather acted out of attachment for his son Rukmani. Text 8 and 9. Translation. The king had the main avenues, commercial roads, and intersections thoroughly cleaned and then sprinkled with water. And he also had the city decorated, triumphant archways, and multicolored banners on the poles. The men and women of the city, arrayed in spotless raiment and anointed with fragrant sandalwood paste, wore precious necklaces, flower garlands, and jeweled ornaments. And their offering homes were filled with the aroma of avuru. Purport. When the earthen roads are sprinkled with water, the dust settles down and the road becomes smooth and firm. King Bhishmaka thoroughly prepared for the great wedding, setting the scene for Lord Krishna's triumphant abduction of beautiful Rukmani Devi. Text 10. Translation. O king, in accordance with the prescribed rituals, Maharaj Bhishmaka worshipped the forefathers, demigods, and brahmanas, feeding them all properly. Then he had the traditional mantras chanted for the well-being of the bride. Text 11. Translation. The bride cleaned her teeth and bathed, after which she put on the auspicious wedding necklace. She was dressed in a brand new upper and lower garments, adorned with the most excellent jeweled ornaments. According to Srila Vishnu Chakravarti, only spotless clothing fresh off the loom should be worn during the auspicious ceremonies. Text 12. Translation. The best of the Brahmanas chanted the mantras of Rig, Sam, and Yajurvedas for the bride's protection. And the priest, learned in the Atharva Veda, offered oblations to pacify the controlling planets. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti points out that the Atharva Veda often deals with the pacification of unfavorable planets. Text 13. Translation. Outstanding in his knowledge of regulatory principles, the king rewarded the Brahmanas with gold, silver, clothing, cows, and sesame seeds mixed with raw sugar. Text 14. Translation. Raja Dhamaghosh, Lord of Chedi, had also engaged the Brahmanas, expert in chanting mantras, to perform all the rituals necessary to assure his son's prosperity. Text 15. Translation. King Dhamagosha traveled to Kundina, accompanied by the armies of elephants exuding mother, chariots hung with golden chains, and numerous cavalry and infantry soldiers. Text 16. Translation. Bhishmaka, the lord of Vidarbha, came out of the city and met King Dhamaghosh, offering him tokens of respect. Bhishmaka then settled Dhamaghosh in a residence specially constructed for the occasion. Text 17. Translation. Shishupal's supporters, Salva, Jarasandha, Dantabhadra, and Viduratha all came, along with Pombraka and thousands of other kings. Those familiar with the history of Lord Krishna's life will immediately recognize the names given in this text. The kings mentioned here maintained a deep animosity towards Shri Krishna and opposed him in one way or the other. But they were all to be frustrated and defeated on the occasion of Shishupal's would-be wedding. Text 18 and 19. Translation. To secure the bride for Shishupal, the kings who envied Krishna and Balaram came to the following decision among themselves. If Krishna comes here with Balaram and other Yadus to steal the bride, we shall band together and fight him. Thus those envious kings went to the wedding with their entire armies and full complement of military conveyances. Purpose. The words samhata, which normally means bound together tightly, may also mean thoroughly struck down or killed. Thus, although Sri Krishna's enemies thought they were unified and strong, samhata in the former sense, they could not successfully oppose the personality of Godhead, and consequently they would be struck down and killed. Samhata in the latter sense. Text 20 and 21. Translation. When Lord Balaram heard about these preparations of the inimical kings and how Lord Krishna had sent out alone to steal the bride, he feared that a fight would ensue. Immersed in affection for his brother, he hurried to Kundini with a mighty army consisting of infantry and of soldiers riding on elephants, horses, and chariots. Text 22. Translation. My lovely daughter of Bhishmaka, the lovely daughter of Bhishmaka anxiously awaited the arrival of Krishna. But when she did not see the Brahmana return, she thought as follows. Text 23. Translation. Princess Rukmani thought, alas, my wedding is to take place when the night ends. How unlucky I am. Lotus-eyed Krishna does not come. I do not know why. And even the Brahmana messenger had not yet returned. Purport. It is apparent from this verse, as confirmed by Srila Swami, that the present scene takes place before the sunrise. Text 24. Translation. Perhaps the faultless Lord, even while preparing to come here, saw something contemptible in me, and therefore has not come to take my hand. Purport. Princess Rukmini boldly invited Sri Krishna to kidnap her. When Rukmini did not see him come, she naturally feared that he had rejected her proposal, perhaps finding some unacceptable quality in her. As expressed here, the Lord himself is unavadya, faultless, and if he saw some fault in Rukmini, she would be unworthy bride for him. It was natural for the young princess to feel such anxiety. Furthermore, if Sri Krishna had actually made this decision, it would be natural for the Brahmana to fear Rukmini's reaction. Were he bring her the news? And that would explain why he had not yet come. Text 25. Translation. I am extremely unfortunate, for the Creator is not favorably disposed towards me, nor is the great Lord Shiva, or perhaps Shiva's wife Devi, who is known as Gauri, Rudrani, Girija, and Sati, has turned against me. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explains that Rukmini might have thought that even if Krishna wanted to come, he might have been stopped on the path by the Creator Brahma, who is not favorably inclined towards me. But why should he be unfavorable? Perhaps it is Maheshwar, Lord Shiva, whom on the occasion I did not properly worship, and who thus became angry with me. But he is Maheshwar, the great controller. So why he would be angry with such an insignificant and foolish girl as me? Or perhaps it's Salva's wife, Gauri Devi. Perhaps it is Shiva's wife, Gauri Devi, who is displeased, although I worship her every day. Alas, alas, how have I offended her, so that she has turned against me? But after all, she is Rudrani, the wife of Rudra, and her very name means one who makes everyone cry. So perhaps she and Shiva want me to cry. But seeing that I am so miserable and about to give up my life, why don't they soften their attitude? The reason must be that Goddess Devi is Girija, an adopted daughter. So why should she be soft-hearted? In her incarnation as Sati, she gave up her body, so perhaps she now wants me to give up my body also. Thus, the Acharya, with realized poetic sensitivity, interprets the various names used in this verse. Text 26. Translation. As she thought in this way, the young maiden, whose mind has already been spoken by Krishna, closed her tear-filled eyes, remembering that there was still time. Srila Sridhar Swami explains the word Kalagya as follows. Rukmani thought, it is not even the right time yet for Govinda to come. Thus she felt a bit consoled. Text 27. Translation. O king, as the bride thus awaited the arrival of Govinda, she felt a twitch on her left thigh, arm, and eye. This was a sign that something desirable would happen. Text 28. Translation. Just then, the purest of learned Brahmanas, following Krishna's order, came to see the divine princess Rukmani within the inner chambers of the palace. Purport. According to Srila Swami, Shri Krishna had reached the gardens outside the city, and out of concern for Rukmani, he had instructed the Brahmana to tell her of his arrival. Text 29. Translation. Noting the Brahmana's joyful face and serene movements, saintly Rukmani, who could expertly interpret such symptoms, inquired from him with a pure smile. Text 30. Translation. The Brahmana announced her the arrival of Lord Yadunandana and relayed the Lord's promise to marry her. Text 31. Translation. Princess Vaidarbhi was overjoyed to learn of Krishna's arrival. Not finding anything at hand suitable to offer to the Brahman, she simply bowed down to him. Text 32. Translation. The king, upon hearing that Krishna and Balaram had come and were eager to witness his daughter's wedding, went forth with abundant offerings to greet them as the music resounded. Text 33. Translation. Presenting them with madhuparka, new clothing, and other desirable gifts, he worshipped them according to the standard rituals. Text 34. Generous King Bhishma arranged the opulent accommodations for the two lords, and also for their army and entourage. In this way, he afforded them proper hospitality. Text 35. Translation. Thus it was that Bhishmaka gave all desirable things to the kings who had assembled for the occasion, honoring them as befitting their political power, age, physical prowess, and wealth. Text 36. When the residents of Vaidarbhapura heard that Lord Krishna had come, they all went to see him. With the cupped palms of their eyes, they drank the honey of his lotus face. Text 37. Translation. The people of the city said, Rukmani, and no one else, deserves to become his wife. And he also, possessing such flawless beauty, is the only suitable husband for Princess Bhishmi. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, this text combines the statements made by different citizens. Some pointed out that Rukmani was a suitable wife for Krishna. Others said that no one else was suitable. Similarly, some stated that Krishna was more suitable for Rukmani, and others stated that no one else would be a suitable husband for her. Text 38. Translation. May Achyuta, the creator of the three worlds, be satisfied with whatever pious work we may have done, and show his mercy by taking the hand of Vaidarbhi. Purport. The devoted citizens of Vidarbha lovingly offer their entire stocks of pious credit to Princess Rukmani. They were eager to see her marry Lord Krishna. Text 39. Translation. Bound by their swelling love, the city residents spoke in this way. Then the bride, protected by the guards, left the inner palace to visit the temple of Ambika. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti quotes the Medini dictionary's definition of the word kala as follows. Kala mule prabadho syach chilada amsha matrake. The word kala means a root or increase or a stone or a mere part. Text 40 and 41. Translation. Rukmini silently went on foot to see the Lord's feet, lotus feet of the deity Bhavani, accompanied by her mothers and girlfriends and protected by the king's valiant soldiers who held their upraised weapons at the ready. She simply absorbed in the lotus feet of Krishna. And all the while, mridangas, conch shells, panavas, horns, and other instruments resounded. Text 42 and 43. Translation. Behind the bride followed thousands of prominent courtesans, bearing various offerings and presents, along with well-adorned Brahmanas' wives, singing and reciting prayers and bearing gifts of garlands, scents, clothing, and jewelry. They were also professional singers, musicians, bards, chroniclers, and heralds. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explains that from our own quarters up to the temple of Bhavani, Rukmini went by palanquin and thus was easily protected. Only for the last 12 to 15 feet from the palace to temple area did she go on foot with royal bodyguards stationed outside the temple on all sides. Text 44. Translation. Upon reaching the goddess temple, Rukmini first washed her lotus feet and hands and then sipped water for purification. Thus sanctioned and peaceful, she came into the presence of Mother Ambika. Text 45. Translation. The older wives of Brahmanas, expert in knowledge of rituals, led the young Rukmini in offering respects to Bhavani, who appeared with her consort Lord Bhava. But according to the Acharyas, here the term Bhavanitvam indicates that in the Ambika temple visited by Rukmini, the presiding deity was the goddess, whose husband appeared in the accompanying role. Thus the ritual was properly performed by women. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti comments that the term Vidhi-gya may be understood to mean that since the learned wives of the Brahmanas knew of Rukmini's desire to marry Krishna, the verb Vandyayam Chakruhu thus indicates that they prompted her to pray for what she really wanted. In this way, like the goddess Bhavani, Rukmini could be united with her eternal male companion. Text 46. Translation. Princess Rukmini prayed, O Mother Ambika, the wife of Lord Shiva, I repeatedly offer my obeisances unto you, together with your children. May Lord Krishna become my husband. Please grant this. Text 47 and 48. Translation.
Prasad.
Rukmini worshipped
Prasad.
the goddess with water, scents, whole grains, incense, clothing, garlands, necklaces, jewelry, and other prescribed offerings and gifts, and also with the arrays of lamps. The married Brahmana women each performed worship simultaneously with the same items, also offering savories and cakes, prepared beetroot, sacred threads, fruit, and sugarcane juice. Text 49. Translation. The ladies gave the bride the remnants of the offerings and then blessed her. She in turn bowed down before him, to them, and the deity, and accepted the remnants of Prashadam. Text 50. Translation. The princess then gave up a vow of silence and left the Ambika temple, holding on to her maidservant with her hand, which was adorned with a jeweled ring. Text 51 and 55. Translation. Rukmani appeared as enchanting as the Lord's illusory potency, who enchants even the sober and the grave. Thus the king gazed upon her virgin beauty, her shapely waist, her lovely face, adorned with earrings. Her hips were graced with a jeweled studded belt. Her breasts were just budding, and her eyes seemed apprehensive of her encroaching locks of hair. She smiled sweetly, her jasmine bud teeth reflecting the glow of her bimbo red lips. As she walked with the motions of a royal swan, the effulgence of her tinkling ankle bells beautified her feet. Seeing her, the assembled heroes were totally bewildered. Lust tore at their hearts. Indeed, when the king saw her broad smile and her shy glance, they became stupefied, dropped their weapons, and fell unconscious to the ground from their elephants, chariots, and horses. On the pretext of procession, Rukmani displayed her beauty for Krishna alone. Slowly she advanced the two moving lotus folds of her feet, awaiting the arrival of the Supreme Lord. With the fingernails of her left hand, she pushed some strands of her hair away from her face and shyly looked from the corner of her eyes at the kings standing before her. At that moment, she saw Krishna. Then, while his enemies looked on, the Lord seized the princess, who was eager to mount his chariot.
Okay, you must keep a ribbon there.
A ribbon over here?
Go. These books on the side. These books from Bhutan have the look me past them. They're on side.
Okay.
जय गिरिराज महाराज की जय, कृष्ण बलराम की जय, जगन्नाथ सुदर्शन की जय, श्री गौर निताई की जय, नरसिंहदेव भगवान की जय।